how do you handle reality after success has hit you? See, it's always going to be a topsy-turvy kind of a life. It's never a straight line. There's going to be highs and lows, highs and lows, highs and lows. The thing is, once you've hit a high and a low is coming, and that low is what I'm calling reality, what are you going to do to handle it? It's a fact of life. When we've seen people reach a serious high, let me just give you an example of this thing called re-entry. In fact, the whole topic I'm discussing in this several episodes is what I call re-entry. In this NASA space exploration things and so on, there's this thing they call atmospheric re-entry. That means when a vessel is coming from up there in space where there is no gravity and is entering the surface of the earth where there's gravity, it meets a lot of opposition, and the vessel that they're using is actually being heated so much opposition. And if you do not have a good vessel, you can actually be incinerated. They call it atmospheric re-entry. The same thing, did you know, it's curious, the same thing happens with success. Some people hit a very serious high in success equation, and then there is this atmospheric success re-entry, so to speak, when they're coming back to reality. I'm going to explain this. How do you handle it? Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Life Signatures podcast with Lawrence Namale. Lawrence is a life coach, author, and keynote speaker who loves to tackle different topics on purpose, productivity, and resilience. His mission in life is to awaken all your boundless possibilities available in you. Life Signatures podcast is dedicated to bring to reality every single person who knows that deep down in their gut, there's got to be more to life than this. And now, here is your host, Lawrence Namale.
Well, I'm not going to bore you with these scientific terminologies, atmospheric re-entry and so on and so forth, but as I've explained to you, you will not have a straight trajectory, maybe an upward trajectory in life when it comes to the equation of success. At times you will succeed and at times you're going to fail. At times you'll be on a high in terms of even feeling you'll be on a high, and at times you're feeling that you're on a low. See, not all of us will be astronauts, and yet there's this aspect of their occupation that most we identify with. And that's what I've told you, it's the atmospheric re-entry. It's when these space astronauts use a space capsule to come back to the earth from the outer space, and the heat generated from that experience is out of this world. How do you handle being on a high? See, the space is an analogy of a high, especially a high that comes from accomplishing something. And in the Bible, there's a curious story of the guy called Elijah. If you read the Bible, let me just share with you the story. This guy actually, he goes out there and he meets his king, and he tells the king that the rain is going to come out today. The rain has been missing for 3 years and there's a drought and famine in the country. And so this guy says, I'm going to meet with you and the rain is going to come. And he does all the things that he does. And in one afternoon reverses the recession in a country where he's bringing in the rain and so on and so forth, and he kills false prophets, and the working queen there tells the man that you are a dead man. And this Elijah guy runs. I mean, he's just experienced a serious high where he's turned the fortunes of a country in one afternoon, and then he's being faced with the prospect of being killed by the queen, and now he runs away from the queen. This is a moment of victory that is juxtaposed immediately with a moment of despair, and he asks God to kill him. God, take me away out of this thing, out of this life, because I cannot handle this anymore. He's just experienced a high. and then a low comes in immediately. It's a re-entry back to reality. How do you deal with such circumstances? How do you deal with such situations? See, there are very many other examples that I can use so that, before we can continue, we bring this thing into perspective. Let me highlight some so that we can learn what re-entry really is. In spiritual circles, those of us who have learned to get into the presence of God, we understand the torments, if you will, of re-entry. See, when you have been in the presence of God, all you want is to stay there. When you come back to earth, and I'm using that in quotes, after that experience, you are irritable. Nothing seems to satisfy you unless you get back into that equation, into that presence. That is what we call re-entry. That's why, by the way, if you look at some of these highly spiritual guys, you might find that at times they're these secluded people, quiet people. Almost as if they're sad. Don't get me wrong, they are also joyous at some point in time until they feel that re-entry is working on them, reality is working on them. They've got to go back and quote unquote recharge, for lack of a better word. An author writes a very powerful article or a poem or a book and makes the whole wide world go wild. The same applies to a movie director, an artist, someone who creates anything, a sportsman, whatever. When they do that, all of a sudden they cannot remain the same. They have become successful. The pressure is on them to maintain that standard. What happens when they come back to re-entry, when they come back to life? A football team such as Leicester wins the English Premier League. A new standard has been set for them, and henceforth they cannot remain the same. What happens? Re-entry is when they are supposed to go back to the bottom tier, mid-level team that they always were. That is what they call re-entry. A high is met immediately with reality. You make your first million. You can never be the same again. A new standard has been set and pressure is now on. However, I'm told that making the first million is the most difficult part. Thereafter, other millions will just be rolling by, attracted by the first million. I wish it was true for thousands also. Re-entry is when your success is being challenged by the status quo. And you've been living in the status quo all your life. All your life you've never been a millionaire, and now all of a sudden you become a millionaire. Re-entry is fighting to maintain your new status quo and to escape the previous status quo. How do you handle such? How do you handle a moment of reality after success? A new product is launched in the market, disrupting the way things have always operated. The pressure is going to be on to maintain the new high. But how do you handle the fear of going back to normal in terms of success? I think you get the point. You need to realize, however, that re-entry does not just affect those major things that I have mentioned. Re-entry could be a weekly thing. In fact, it could even be a day-by-day challenge. And that's what I want to talk about. That's what I want to address in the next several episodes here. It depends on how intentional. Remember, we talked about intentionality in the past episode. How intentional you are living your life. The higher intentional index you have, the higher the risk of re-entry you're going to get. For those who are highly intentional, re-entry could be one of the major demotivators that they face daily. You have to learn to deal with this extreme thing called re-entry. You know why? Because the side effects of a low after success can be of great detrimental effects to you, to such an extent that they can take you to the other extreme end, the opposite end. And when they take you to the opposite end, coming back becomes very hard. If you're highly spiritual, you know what I'm talking about. One moment you can be in the very presence of God doing great stuff. The next moment you're doing wicked, weird things that shocks you. The propensity is always going to be there. So re-entry is something that we need to learn how to deal with this. And let me just talk about the side effects before I can talk about the 5 things you need to do to deal with your re-entry. And I've already maybe shared with some of these things with you on this episodes, on this podcast. Let us talk about the side effects. See, once you've accomplished a certain feat, inherently as a human being, you are under a spell of what I call the mirage effect. Inherently, we never really arrive. I talked about this in the previous episodes. We can always get better. We can always move to a better glory, like the Bible says, moving from glory to glory. That is why re-entry is a very critical time to be handled, especially after a success. The following are some of the side effects of re-entry. Number 1, a high demand of the best from you. Once a new standard is set, you might not want to be identified with the previous status quo. You might not want to place your name next to anything less than the best that you've just achieved. Of course, this calls for greater demand in time, greater demand in effort, greater demand in resources, greater demand in professionalism. Excellence, as you might imagine, is not cheap. It costs you not a lot, it costs you every single thing that you can have. And that is some of the side effects of re-entry. That is why a person who is previously successful can appear unhappy, because they care. That's the key word. They care about their next. Another key word. They care about their next. And it is demanding loads and loads from them. And so they become despondent. They become withdrawn, because they're paying the price for the next thing that has not even been started, and it has to surpass the new standard that they have already set. The second side effect is the fear of failure. People might think that those who have made it are no longer afraid to fail. Oh, you will be shocked. You will be wrong. Those who have made it know that not just the world, but their own selves will judge success not in history, but actually in continuity. Actually, when you become successful, they dare you. Case in point, those of you who normally got born again, what normally happens? You change your spiritual nature and you're now a new spiritual being. They normally give you weeks. Just this guy, just give him 1 week. Just give him 2 days. This one, I know him. Just give him, in fact, just give him today. Fear of failure operates especially after you've succeeded in doing something. The world is judging you with a different standard. You're also judging yourself in a different standard, and so fear comes in, crops in. Suppose I don't maintain it. Suppose I fail. True success is perpetual. It is not an event, but a lifestyle. Therefore, re-entry automatically places upon you a demand and a burden not to fail in your next venture. That thing of next venture keeps coming up. Someone said, judge not success in history but in continuity, because true success is perpetual. It is not an event, it is a lifestyle. And then the other detrimental thing of re-entry is exhaustion. To be honest with you, launching a successful venture or project takes a toll on you. In fact, at some point, you might be operating purely on adrenaline, purely in the zone. It is only when the venture is out there in the open that you realize how much physical, emotional, spiritual, mental strength that you've been exerting into it. Not to mention the financial strain. It therefore follows that exhaustion is one of the biggest indicators for this period of re-entry. And then finally, one of the biggest side effects of re-entry is addiction. You will never ever be the same again. Once you've tested success, it is addictive. Your life has turned right side up, and nothing short of this will satisfy. Your greatest escape is from the previous life, and your greatest responsibility is to maintain status quo that has just been established. In war, they call it consolidation. Winning the battle is not the most expensive. It is maintaining the conquered territory that is the most expensive thing, because you're now addicted to it. So as you can see, it is imperative that you maintain your new acquired territory so you can remain successful. To do that, you need to manage re-entry pretty well. And one of the greatest visionaries of all time, Apostle Paul, he said the following. He said, "My friends, I don't feel like I've arrived, but I forget what is behind and I struggle for what is ahead." What a powerful statement to make. So in the next several episodes, we're going to be sharing some of the things that you're going to do in order to manage your re-entry after you become successful. Stay tuned. A special shout out to my mentor Jeffrey Howard of Visionary Business University, found at mastermindmentor.com, who has graciously provided me with the soundtrack and the introductory track to this podcast. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for listening to Life Signatures Radio. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe to Life Signatures Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, or visit our website at lifesignatures.libsyn.com. Life Signatures Radio, fresh, clean, and inspiring.